Okay, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really cool premiere for you from the brand Orion Watches. Now, this brand was founded by Nick of Watches by Nick fame not too long ago, but pretty much ever since he graduated from, certifying, making his way through watchmaking school, he's really taken kind of his brand and especially the Orion brand to the next level, which has been very impressive to see that growth and see, basically the ton of just recognition he's garnered for himself as somebody who kind of started out just doing very simple Seiko mods and now having really his own kind of little boutique micro brand. So that's really awesome, and it's great to kind of see that, to see somebody who's passionate about watches, of course, make a living out of it. So always happy to support this brand. Nick's a great guy, and the Orion brand has really caught my eye in terms of quality, fit, finish, and then of course the style here, and that's going to be one of the huge players here for this Orion Hellcat. Now, a little bit about this type of watch. It's actually a pilot's watch, which I did not know until I read into the watch a little bit. I saw it more as just kind of a balanced everyday watch, but as a pilot watch, I think it really has those key common characteristics and design language you would associate with a pilot's watch, which really you're going to want that balance of legibility and functionality. But from an everyday standpoint, you're getting a nice blend of sporty and dressy attributes. So it's something that can be worn every day, but of course is part of a larger formula of something that reads more as a pilot's watch, the Arabic numerals. It's just really gorgeous, even down to the font. It's actually individual font that was designed particularly for this watch. It's not like he went through and just chose a font that already existed or imitated another one that was out there. The nice thing is that was actually quite a big process, and that's those little fine details that really pay off when it comes to this piece. So with all that said, let's go ahead and take a closer look. Okay, now as you can see in hand, this thing is absolutely gorgeous, and you know what, even in the renders, the photos and everything, I knew this was going to be a handsome piece. But one thing that really caught me by surprise is that once I had it in hand, the scale of the watch reminded me so much of another watch that is very popular and very mainstream, and something that the watch idiot savant community really swear by, which is the Sarb from Seiko. And the crazy thing is these watches aren't really that similar, but the scale is really where it gets it. I mean, as far as the finishing goes, totally different styles. I mean, the case profile there gives you a much better look. Definitely a lot more refined and clean when you're looking at the Hellcat versus looking at the Sarb, which is really nice in its own right. But one of the things is, if you swear by this watch and think that this thing wears comfortably, man, you guys are really going to be blown away just by how many tricks that Nick has done to really incorporate a fantastic wearing watch, with one that also is quite gorgeous to look at. But one of the things you'll notice is they do have very similar, that kind of dial to bezel ratio. The general overall silhouette is similar, although much different. Once you just take it at an angle there, you can just see the difference. This is a lot more rounded. It has some cuts made into it versus just a beautiful, clean, bold bevel there across that chamfered edge. Really just gorgeous. And then of course when you look at the case back ratio versus the bezel, you can see it's actually quite thick on this movement. Of course, it's because of the movement, the 6R versus the Miyota that's in here, which is actually quite thin. But I mean, look at those beautiful case proportions there, that beautiful mid case, nice and slender, nice little soft slope to it, and then you have basically the about even, you have that case back and that bezel just protruding just so to give you that nice balanced fit and look. Absolutely gorgeous. Now the Hellcat is already out, and it's really awesome, needless to say, and I feel like it's already gotten tons of visibility, but not a video review. So I'm definitely really happy to be presenting you guys with that now. This is going to retail direct for $600, and I think it's actually quite a compelling piece at that price. A little bit about the dimensions. They did go across the screen earlier in the video, but this is a 39mm diameter watch with a 10.5mm thickness. and then a 47 millimeter width from lug to lug. Of course, it's made in full 316L stainless steel. It has a beautiful sapphire with some inner AR coating there. Really nicely done. It looks like there might be a touch of a dome there, but it's close to being flat. If it's not with a slight, very slight dome. Really gorgeous though. When it comes to this, I really, of course, digging the knurled crown. This is something that I really enjoyed on the Calamity model. It's nice to see it carried over here. I think the first time I saw that was on the Orion 1. That knurled crown, really beautiful sizing, great to actuate, to use. Nicely signed. And then you have this beautiful and unique case back, just a high polish. You do have the curved case back that you guys saw on the Calamity, but now it's also on the Hellcat. But instead of being display case back, it's just a super high polish. And then you actually even have the constellation for Orion right there, which is really great, as you guys can see. Very cool. And with that high polish, it's definitely something that can give you a little something to look at, which I think is really awesome. A nice original and beautiful touch from that standpoint. Now, the movement inside, like I mentioned, is a Miyota 9015. It is equipped with a date here at the 6, which is really nice, and also it's able to give you that thinness. Now, not every watch that has a 9015 in it is going to be this thin, so it was really nice for them to kind of take advantage of that real thin profile movement by putting it into a very thin profiled watch. Now, as far as the dial goes, beautifully done. This sunburst, kind of burgundy, maroon, root beer color palette. It's just gorgeous. It has kind of copper tone accents there that can maybe even be considered rose gold when they're under some high reflection as far as the handset goes. But really gorgeous color palette, color play on this one. Really on point. Everything's printed, of course. It actually does have BGW9 loom. And of course, this isn't some field watch or, some diver where it's going to need, crazy thickly applied loom. But it is really nice to have so you can get some visibility in low light conditions. Now, as far as the water resistance, it's really great at 100 meters water resistant with a screw down crown. The screw down crown definitely helps. Just giving you a feeling of, reassurance when it comes to having this thing submerged underwater. There's tons of watches that say that they have the seals that are strong enough to protect you from 100 meters of water resistance, but we all know that once you start getting underwater and start flapping your arms around and whatnot, it can kind of change the dynamic of how waterproof a watch really is. So it's nice to have that extra assurance, and honestly, most of us are never going to go deeper than a couple of meters, let alone to 100 meters, especially with a watch like this. Now, as far as the lugs go, we do have 20 millimeter lugs, so this thing is going to be a real strap monster, but it actually comes equipped with a really fine strap, guys. This thing is beautifully done and finished. You can see finished edges, and the color palette there, the tone, definitely ties in with that beautiful dial. And then you're going to see also all the life and color play and how dynamic just the richness and the textures and tones are on this really nicely done vintage style strap. Even the stitching here, everything is just online. Look at that. Look at how, I've never seen a level of stitch that was that beautifully done. Everything is literally just lined up, laying next to each other. There's no overlap. This is just meticulously done and executed to just such a high and fine level. Then you look at this beautifully milled clasp there. Signed little secret spot. Then you have that great bevel milled everywhere, then also signed with the Orion name on top. Really just gorgeous. And you can see that there's so much life that's inside this, so as it wears in, it's only going to take on more of a personality and more of a story as you wear the timepiece, which is really great. So one of the nice things is actually, although this will probably be a real strap monster, it's going to come in 3 different strap widths. You're going to be able to get it in short, which is featured here, regular size, and then a long size. Definitely follow the links to get an idea of which one might be fitting you best if you are ready to order something like this. For me, I would probably have been better off with the regular size strap, so I wouldn't have too much extra tongue hanging out. But here on this kind of review model, it is the short, which we'll show you guys on wrist right now. Okay guys, as you can see on my 7¼ inch wrist, this 39mm watch is going to wear just about perfectly. Even if I get a little bit more arm in there, you can see it doesn't really appear undersized. And then although of course there's going to be some lens distortion making it feel a bit oversized when it's up close, such is kind of the way of the wristy when you're going in for that close wrist shot. But look at the details on this one. Look at that little concave line there on the outside of that bezel, which almost give it just some life when the light hits it, because of the curvature. Almost gives you kind of a liquid metal, kind of just a beautiful pop in motion. It's something that you really won't be able to capture in photos. And then here you can see that beautifully done, that bevel, that high polish, just gorgeous. Look at the way the light just dances off of that. So sharp, sharply done. Reads all the way around, super thin profile, will fit right under a cuff very easily. And of course on my 7¼ inch wrist, the small strap isn't a great fit, but you know what, it sure still looks good. And the thickness, and the fact that it's still quite pliable even at this thickness, just show you the type of quality that you're going to get there. So this thing wears absolutely magnificently. And although that dial is really the showstopper, you know what, this case is a sleeping giant when it comes to attention to detail. This thing just sings. Look at that. Oh man, there's just so much visual interest and play and light with this watch in general. Everything from the case to the strap to even this beautifully done buckle. Look at you can even see at this distance the quality of finish on that milled buckle. Just really gorgeous. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get loom shot set up and move into some low light transition and final thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights. As you can see, this thing is, it's adequate. It's printed on there. It's not meant to be any type of insane loom by any means. Although on the site it's listed as BGW9, they might be just referring to the black dial model, because this to me is reading a bit more like a C1. As you can see, it is fading a bit there, but you know what, let me actually get the black light, hit it real quick so you guys can get a nice idea of what this thing is going to look like, with a nice decent charge on it. Of course, it's been sitting under my studio lights, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's at full charge there like you would get from if it was out in direct sunlight. So let's go ahead and actually move into some low light transition, just to kind of give you guys an idea of how this watch is going to read when you're not in direct sunlight or optimal lighting conditions, just when you're kind of going from indoors to outdoors, coming in and out of buildings, in and out of a vehicle, whatnot. Whew, man, that dial. But look at the brushing, guys. I know you probably want to stare at the dial and the glint that comes off of that, because that is just gorgeous. I love the high contrast finish. You can see the really bright, vibrant pops of red, and then just it goes in such deep burgundies and dark chocolatey tones there. Nice little root beer vibe to a lot of that. But when you look at the brushing, the uniformity on this case finish, when you look at the way the light just dances off of those high polished points, oh man, that's just something to appreciate. Look at that. Look at the way the light just dances on that. Really, really gorgeous. And something you don't want to take too much for granted, because wow, that is a looker. So beautiful in that low light transition, just like you'd expect. Really quite gorgeous. So let's go ahead, hit the lights, get into some final thoughts. On the wrist, of course, this thing wears super thin and just wraps around to give you such a secure feel. As far as model variants go, there's a really cool and interesting black dial option with a blasted case, but it also still retains a lot of high polished accents, which I think is great and something that we haven't seen before. So super high contrast, which really ties into obviously the black dial, with white. So I think that's really a nice touch. As far as comparable models, it's really tough to compare this to anything that's out there, just due to the level of originality at the price point. Most of the competition is going to be pretty derivative, in the under $1,000 range. I mean, even though this might share a similar silhouette with the Sarb, it actually looks nothing like it. Its closest piece that makes you think of the Sarb is just I would say the proportions, the dial to bezel to case edge proportion. Everything else, essentially, I mean, it's a very different watch. So I was almost hesitant to bring it into the picture because they are not that similar, but you know what? They wear very similarly and they fit a very similar space. And I think it's the space that they fill the most of is on your wrist. I mean, these things just belong on the wrist. They need to be worn. They need to be out there. I mean, they're just gorgeous to look at. So really impressed. Bottom line, Nick just continues to define and refine the Orion brand. And this release only further reinforces his place in a very competitive market as a watchmaker to keep your eye on, and that's really nice. So there's very kind of different tiers of watch brands that are out there, especially in the micro brand level. You find a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of businessmen that really like watches, and they see a space open, and they crunch the numbers. It can be a little bit sterile when it comes to what they produce. They produce something for the market, right? Versus somebody who's a real watch fan who's producing something that they love, right? As a bit of a love letter to the community. And then you take that up another notch. Now you have a watchmaker that is, of course, a huge watch fan and an aspiring businessman. From that standpoint, then you really get a synergy that can present something like this, the Orion Hellcat. It would have been so easy for him to play it safe, do a white dial, a black dial, and a blue dial. But man, he just took it to the next level. You got the blasted case, you got the brushed case, you have a beautiful burgundy dial option, you have a super matte other option. So it's very extreme here. So you're going to get real polarizing, two different watch options of the same piece, and they just read in such different ways. It's really exciting. And I believe if I read some of the social media posts recently right, it looks like he's actually working on a bracelet for these, which for me, I'm really excited to see what he comes up with, just because he has a real eye, not only for the ergonomics and what's going to wear really nicely, but for something that just from a design aspect is also quite eye-catching. So big props to Nick. Always happy to feature anything that he comes out with on this channel, because I'm such a big believer in what he's doing. And I'm really happy to see somebody who kind of started out with a love for something as simple as a Seiko mod, and can grow that and develop it into something, a legitimate watchmaking career. So I think that's really awesome. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.